I want to begin with a moment of reflection together as we start this message for today. When was the last time you really played? Think back. A time when you were playful. Could have been just this morning or the other day, or maybe it's been a while now. If you've thought of something and you'd like to share it, you're welcome to go ahead and put it in the chat box. And ushers, let's make sure the chat box is open again, please. When was the last time you played? What did you do? Maybe you're wondering what counts as playing. How about this? When you feel playful, what does that feel like? Can you remember what it feels like in your body when you feel playful? Maybe it's a feeling that's lighthearted, a feeling of lift in our chests, that feeling we get when we feel carefree, the physical feeling of life's responsibilities and that kind of heaviness we sometimes carry, just removed for a while. Might be accompanied by laughter or spontaneous smiles. When was the last time you felt that way? I've found that in the last year, playing has been more important to me than ever. One day I went for a bike ride in a butterfly costume. Totally recommend. There is nothing like the feeling of wings spread out behind you. It's just great. And it's a lot of fun to ride past little kids when you're dressed in a costume. Another time I went roller skating with oversized ladybug antenna on my helmet, my skate helmet. And I kept forgetting that I had the helmet on until I would skate by somebody and then they would laugh and smile. And then it would make me laugh and smile too. By the way, I skated by 3 members of this church who I recognized and waved to, and I don't think they recognized me. Probably weren't expecting that. Now you are. Well, maybe like frolicking around like that's not your particular style, that's okay. Other things count as playing too, and now I'm looking in the chat box and I see some great examples. Bouncing a baby on your lap, going sledding, playing Uno, watering the garden with a hose. That can definitely be playful. I think of other things too, like taking delight in the things around you as you meander along a path and follow your curiosity wherever it leads you. Throwing a ball or a stick for a dog and enjoying the game just as much as the dog does. Creating something like maybe art or music or writing just for the joy of it. How about getting absorbed in a story of some kind, like a novel or even a movie or a theater performance that engages your imagination and brings you pleasure? That counts too. Or how about daydreaming? Do you ever do that? Just let your imagination wander. When my son was really little, maybe about 3 years old, one day he was playing in his bedroom while I was in the kitchen, and I decided to go and check on him. And when I peeked in through the doorway, he was sitting with his back to me. Humans have the smallest shoulders when they're that age, and I will never forget the sweetness of that scene. He had his back to me and he was playing with his wooden train set, and he was humming. I had never heard him hum before. He was totally absorbed in his imagination and in his joy. When is the last time you felt like that? What all play has in common, says the play researcher Stuart Brown, is that it offers a sense of engagement and pleasure. It takes the player out of a sense of time and place, and the experience of doing it is more important than the outcome. It is something that is spontaneously done for its own sake. Last year, I put up bird feeders and I made bird baths in my yard so I could watch the birds be happy and playful too. I think that also counts. Now, I did not feel playful all the time, of course. No one does. There was a lot to be serious about in 2020, and there still is. There always is. But when things are serious, that might be when we most need our playfulness. And when things are serious, that's also what our playfulness has been preparing us for since we were little kids. There's a reason that playfulness is explicitly part of so many of the world's religious traditions. I mentioned Stuart Brown. He's a psychiatrist and he's the founder of the National Institute for Play. He became curious about the role of playing in human development when he was doing research on murderers, not where you would probably expect somebody to launch a play career. But the thing is that in his research, he started to notice, and this, I mean, it was really noticeable, it was pretty extreme and it stood out. He noticed that the people he was studying, people who had committed terrible, terrible crimes, almost always had a history of not being allowed to play normally as children do. About 90% of the time, this was true with these violent offenders. And Brown got really curious about that. And he went on to do a bunch more research in less scary situations. And he realized that play is crucial for human development, especially in childhood, all kinds of play. Through rough and tumble play, we learn to take measured risks, and we learn empathy when we experience the natural consequences of some of those risks. In cooperative play, we learn problem solving and communication. In imaginative play, we practice creativity and thinking outside the box. And in all of it, we learn about ourselves. If you think back to the ways you most enjoyed playing as a child, you can probably see a reflection of your personality, interests, and strengths right now. When I was little, I read a lot of books, I wrote poems, and I invented games where I was in charge. I was very small, but that did not deter me in any way. And I also hula hooped and skateboarded, things I've also done in the actual line of duty as your minister. So there you have it, right? Now, another really interesting thing about humans is that while other creatures in the animal kingdom also play, not all of them continue to do so after they are grown. And humans are one of the critters that do. It's a trait called neoteny, if you want to be geeky about it, which I totally do. Neoteny means retaining immature qualities into adulthood. See, you thought that was a bad thing. It turns out that our playfulness, which humans are hardwired to retain all of our lives, it's actually one of our superpowers, and it's helped us to be adaptive, resilient, and creative. We especially need those strengths right now, don't we? As we face all the challenges of this area, all the challenges, the ecological and social and spiritual challenges, as we tackle those, our playfulness and our joy are not a diversion, but actually a strength and a resource that we bring to it. They're also irresistible, right? Who would you rather join forces with to work for a better world? The playful people, right? The people who've tapped into creativity and joy. So we retain our playful hardwiring all through our lives, but as we get older, people do tend to play less. You know, in our work-oriented culture, where more than half of Americans do not use all of their paid vacation days, play can be perceived as a waste of time. Also, our egos or negative self-talk might get in the way. Like, are there some ways you would like to play, but you're holding yourself back? Maybe you think that's too silly, or I'd look silly if I try to do that. Well, let me tell you something. The word silly comes from the old German word selig, which means blessed. So, blessed be. Definitely don't listen to the haters, especially the ones in your own mind. Play helps us get out of our heads. When we become absorbed in it, we let go of the self-awareness that is so often accompanied by that inner critic. It's very liberating. We transcend ourselves for a while. I think this transcendence is one of the reasons that playing or playfulness is part of the world's religions. We see it in the many creative rituals, the music, things like liturgical dance, funny parables, jokes. Jokes are very disarming. They come in sideways at religious truths. The comedian Lenny Bruce is reported to have said, quote, "I know my humor is outrageous when it makes the Unitarians so mad they burn a question mark on my front lawn." We hold the truth lightly, but that doesn't mean we don't stand for anything, right? That joke gets in sideways at that religious truth. In Buddhism, there's a story about a young monk in the 9th century who asks a Buddhist master to summarize the essential teachings of the Buddha and the holy patriarchs. And that master replies, "The Buddha is a bull-headed jailkeeper and the patriarchs are horse-faced old maids." Well, having studied Buddhism quite a bit, I take that to mean that we should not take the teachings on authority alone or merely parrot them back, but should see for ourselves whether they are true. If a teaching becomes unhelpful or untrue, then we should let it go, regardless of who taught it. Hold the truth lightly in order to stay true. Alan Watts, who was a lifelong Buddhist and for a short time also an Episcopal priest, said that the universe seems to be essentially playful itself in the sense that it is totally unnecessary. The universe seems to be essentially playful itself in the sense that it is totally unnecessary. It's not for a particular end. Well, that's an interesting idea. Watts pointed out that Hinduism describes the creation of the universe as Leela, or divine play. I think that the Jewish and Christian stories of creation also seem like divine play. In them, we hear a story of God improvising, imagining things into being and enjoying them, seeing that they are good, as the scriptures say. And God creatively populates the earth in these stories with such creatures as tasseled wabagons, red-lipped batfish, chocolate frogs, and the screaming hairy armadillo. Not named in scripture, but evident now. Look them up. Those are real creatures. And tell me that's not a playful story. But as for Watts' comments that the universe is totally unnecessary, well, I think that this is a pretty big theological claim to make. I mean, who gets to decide what the universe is for, right? I mean, if we go by the games I played when I was little, I do. But really, to say that the universe is unnecessary, it seems based on the question of whether there was a goal behind the creation of it, right? Like if you think that there's no conscious creator or that creation was only divine play without purpose, then according to that logic, the universe was technically unnecessary. And that's a forward kind of looking. There's an intention and then a creation. But there's another way to look at it, which is a backward way of looking at it. We start with now, or even the future, rather than with the past. And then I think we can say such things as, in order for there to be beauty and awe, the universe was necessary. It was necessary in order for love to take place, in order that existence could mean something. It was necessary that the bond between energies and particles, the interconnectedness of things, could be given extraordinary shapes. In that sense, the universe is as necessary as our apparently purposeless playing. Expressive, creative, sustaining. I'm going to wrap this sermon up in just a minute, but before I do you want to hear the funniest thing that happened to me while I was away? I went to a new healthcare provider for a checkup, and at the first appointment, the nurse asked if I would like to have my height measured. Sure, I told her. I'm over 40. This should be interesting. Let's see what's going on with my height. So I stood in front of this measuring thing, and she measured me, and she said, "Looks like you're 5 feet tall." Well, I have never been more than 4 feet, 11 inches tall in my entire life. I think I yelled, "Get out of here." She double checked and it said the same thing. No, I was not wearing shoes. Now, the internet assures me that this is impossible and that the measuring device in this brand new medical clinic is probably not accurate. But Wouldn't it be amazing if it were a side effect of the COVID vaccine? I had just gotten my second dose a few weeks earlier. I tell you what, if you haven't done it yet, I encourage all of you to go get vaccinated too, and then check your height and report back. We'll see what's going on. As we wrap up, I want to leave you with some words from another UU minister, the Reverend Marisol Caballero. She writes, "To play is to pretend. And honestly, sometimes the world seems too heavy to leave the house, let alone inspire moments of joy. But the more I watch the news these days, the more I'm coming to view playing, intentionally seeking joy, as a means of radical resistance." The more I watch the news these days, the more I'm coming to view playing as a means of radical resistance. She also offers a prayer, which I'd like to close the sermon with today. So will you join me in a spirit of prayer? The words of Marisol Caballero. Divine mystery, you are present in my joy and in my sorrow, anger, and fear. Guide me to create joy in my life and in the lives of others, that despair finds no permanent home in my soul. Amen.